Mike DeWine and Mary Taylor had more harsh words for each other this week in the suddenly bitter Republican primary for governor. Here's the latest mud. A PAC supporting Mike DeWine claims it stopped John Kasich's White House bid and says Taylor would just be a third term for John Kasich, which is odd because DeWine seems to be aligned with Kasich and Taylor has spent months giving the governor a stiff arm. Taylor responded to DeWine's Mary Doesn't Work Twitter account by saying she's been fighting for conservative causes while coping with her son's struggle with addiction. Auditor Dave Yost chimed in and warned his fellow Republican Taylor not to bring children into the campaign, pointing out that Mike DeWine lost a daughter in a tragic car accident. Joe Ingles, what is going on in this race?
That is a very good question. I think, we're seeing candidates who are going out in a very low point very early on. And I wonder if maybe some of this is the fact that you've got Mary Taylor out there who is being outspent. Looks like she doesn't have nearly as much name recognition, not doing as well in the polls. And she really legitimately doesn't have a lot of options, especially since there's not a debate right now. If they debated, I don't know, maybe that would take some of the sting out of it. Maybe they wouldn't be fighting this low so fast. I don't know.
Why pay attention to her at all, Mike? I mean, if she's that far back in the polls, doesn't have the money to respond, just run positive ads if you're Mike DeWine and move on to the general.
Well, you would think that would be the way it should be done, Mike, but politicians just generally don't seem to do it. They rise to the bait. And you get into these things of people yelling at each other. It seems sort of senseless to me, really. I wish we could have that type of a campaign where people would just stand and discuss the issues. But you don't have it that way. You watch the debates on national TV. There's not much difference. They clean them up a little bit, but it's the same thing. Yeah. It's sad, but apparently it works.
Mary, as Joe says, I think she's trying to get some earned media here by being as negative as she is, and she sees that as her strategy. And then I think what happened was DeWine, either he saw a poll or he just got fed up personally with it, or his campaign did, and they sort of began fighting back in this last week and matching sort of the negative tone with the negative tone.
Herb, we'll talk about the Democrats in a moment, but this is what the Republicans were hoping to avoid, was a bitter primary.
And I think everybody's surprised that the DeWine campaign has really gotten into this because, again, presumably they're far ahead, they're the strong favorites and all that. And all this does now is elevate or lower both candidates to the same level, gives Mary Taylor a lot of free publicity and all of that. You can have contrast ads, but they don't have to be as mean as these have been. And that's what's really worrisome about this from the Republican perspective. Primaries can be divisive, and normally, the wounds of a primary heal pretty quickly, but if they keep on going in this direction, it's going to be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, Mike DeWine did tell the Dispatch that he regrets the "lock her up" hashtag that was associated with one of the anti-Mary Taylor tweets. He said that was too far and he wouldn't have done it, but it was his campaign that did it. It wasn't a PAC. It was something he had control over. Bringing children into the campaign, it's generally hands-off, but is it not a legitimate explanation as to why possibly Mary Taylor missed work because she was dealing with her son's addiction, a family health crisis? It's a logical explanation, Julie.
I don't know the particulars, but I do know that when I heard about both her sons struggling with addiction and looked back at those questions that were raised about her clocking in and out of work, trying to telecommute, allowing her chief of staff to come and go, it did come to my mind that perhaps she was flexing hours like many of us do at work when we're handling something at home. I don't know if that's the case. I do think that once she went out about her sons and what she had been through, it made sense that she would continue to maybe bring that up in a campaign.
What you normally say to a candidate is don't attack your opponent's children. Mm-hmm. Mary Taylor was talking about her own family situation. I was a little surprised that Dave Yost got involved in that discussion. He did not need to. If you start attacking your opponent's children, well then of course that's, especially if they're young children, that's really out of bounds. But all I sort of do is say, I've had family difficulties.
Yeah.
I think that had she come out, and perhaps she will, if this thing gets any traction about not being at work and all that stuff that she had a few months ago or whatever it was, and says exactly what you suggested, Mike, that listen, I missed some time because here's the reason why. And my sons were struggling with addiction, and I really felt I had to spend time with them as a mother and so forth. I think that would have about ended, and I can't imagine anybody coming up and attacking that excuse. That would be so foolish. And I think that issue would be done with if she did that.
Jill, you had a story this week on Jim Renacci giving money as a lobbyist, but he had questions about whether he was a lobbyist and didn't report the money. What's going on there? This is again a pro-Trump drain the swamp candidate who now is linked to lobbying money.
Right. Well, he was registered as a lobbyist himself, as he was also a candidate and then for a brief time an actual congressman. So that was a piece of the story. There are records that come into play when you're a registered lobbyist. It's part of the Honesty and Transparency in Government Act of 2007. It says, you need to file and tell people whether you're giving contributions as a lobbyist. It's a weird case because he was both a lobbyist and a candidate and then a congressman, but he did not report on those forms about $50,000 that he had given. They're saying that he was inactive at that time and that he never ever lobbied. I did find out that on Friday he was repairing his paperwork in Washington to make that a little clearer.
But this gets into the bigger issue is all these candidates want to run as outsiders when they really haven't been outsiders. I mean, Mary Taylor has spent half of her professional career at the State House, but yet she's the outsider. I mean, Jim Renacci, I'm the outsider, but I was lobbying, then I'm a congressman. It's just, it's crazy.
Right, and I mean, prior to that, I think that Renacci was, he was Wadsworth mayor, he was on a city council, and everybody is trying to do that.
And not just the outsider, but also for many of them, the Trump outsider. And I'm not sure what a good strategy that is for the general election, because all those words will come back and say, oh, so you're the candidate of not just the outsider forces, but the Trump forces. Those aren't the same thing necessarily.